Hi there. I'm Jason R Wallace, and I play the Master on the Nth Doctor Adventures. Well, it was June of last year. I was on the VAA forums, the Voice Acting Alliance forums, and I was looking for a new project to work on. And I can't remember the specifics exactly, but somehow I stumbled onto the first episode of Season 1 of Nth Doctor. And I heard it, and I thought it was wonderful. I thought it captured the spirit of the show, and I thought it was well put together, and I knew that I wanted to be a part of it in some small way. So I sent a message to Jake saying that I appreciated the show, and that if he ever needed anybody to play the Master or the Valeyard or something like that, because I often play villains, probably just because of my voice alone. If he ever needed anyone to play one of those characters, then, just to drop me a line. And sure enough, pretty quickly, I think, within like 2 or 3 days, if I remember correctly, he sent a message back saying that the person that he had lined up to play the Master had sort of disappeared off the face of the earth, and would I mind reading some audition lines, which of course I was only too happy to do, and he loved it, and here we are now. This is a tricky thing to answer because you don't want to be too similar to a guy like the Master, who, by all accounts, is a genocidal madman. But then again, you could accuse the Doctor in some of his lives of being exactly the same. There's a certain kind of campy theatricality there about the character that I have often used on stage and in my real life. It's fun to play that kind of like arch heightened quality in a person. And as a live theater person, that's almost embedded in your DNA. So it was actually quite easy for me to channel that. There's also a kind of a sardonicism, a sort of sarcasm with a bitter edge to the character that was natural for me to play, because I'm a very sarcastic person myself, and I've been accused of having a razor tongue before, so that again was not hard at all to channel that. And we're also both dedicated to eliminating all life off of the face of the earth. Now, this question is a hard one to answer, unfortunately, because I've only ever met Austin, who plays the Doctor. And I say met in quotation marks because we've never actually met personally in the flesh, so to speak. But we have had some conversations, vocal conversations on Skype and, email and, message and all that sort of thing. Austin is wonderful. He is obviously very talented, and he brings a kind of brightness and enthusiasm to almost everything he does. That I've heard anyway, and it's great and it's inspirational in a way to work with a person who is that, sort of up and dedicated to it. I love working with him in this sort of limited capacity. That's just the reality of making entertainment online these days. You're pulling from a lot of different sources across 2 different countries here, and you don't always have time to or the means to get together and actually create these sort of working relationships. So yeah, I always enjoy working with Austin. In fact, we brought him over in on the Doctor Who Fan Stories project, where I play my own Doctor. We brought him into the episode because we love his work, and so it's great to work with him in this sort of limited context. As for everyone else on the show, Emma and Jake, of course, and all of the rest of the cast, I'd like very much to work with them in a more personal way in the future, but let's just hope for that, I suppose. Pef also, who played a doctor very recently in the show, is great to work with too. She plays my companion in that Doctor Who Fan Stories project I mentioned, and she is, of course, talented and witty, and she's a great asset to have. So I'd like to speak more about it, but unfortunately I haven't gotten really down to working with all of them yet in the way that I ought to. So fingers crossed. I'd have to say in episode 7, The Oncoming Storm, there's a moment where the Doctor and the Master sort of sit down, and put aside their conflict for the moment, and they reminisce about Gallifrey and their childhood. And there's a kind of sensitivity and a tenderness there that you don't often see between the two characters, just because of the necessary grand sci-fi stake building that you have to do in the show. It was nice to have that moment because it was a good sort of palate cleansing thing for the rest of the episode, and it reaffirmed the idea that these two people aren't mortal enemies in the classical sense. They're just they're old friends who have, through the ravages of time and their personal lives, have just gone astray from each other and chosen different paths, and now they are sort of fundamentally at odds with each other. And so they've got to reconcile that with the fact that there's actually a very sensitive, emotional relationship between the two of them. There's an intimacy there. It was nice to acknowledge that and to have a moment for that to breathe, so that it humanizes the Master and makes the Doctor out to be more of less of a stock crusading hero type, and more of just more human in that way. Probably episode 6, Alice, just because it was so fun to do all those different voices, all of those elements of the Master's psyche, the King and Queen of Hearts and the pig and all that. And I record these episodes, these in this series, sort of page by page. So I was doing sort of live switching back and forth between these voices. So it was an added extra challenge there. So it was fun, both in sense of the story and the context and all that being kind of darkly whimsical in that way that Doctor Who can do and do so well. And it was also a technical challenge, which is the ideal. That's sort of what you're striving for in these projects, is to do something that's both fun and also helps to stretch your acting legs, so to speak. No, actually, I mean, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, anything major, anything, I thought that, that the story maybe went a different, a different direction or anything like that. No, there were some technical issues in the first series, just some issues where the music might have drowned out the dialogue, or, some kind of balancing issue, which is a very minor, it's a quibble, really. And it's something that I mentioned to Jake, and he, took into account, and, that has been mostly settled. So yeah, I mean, other than those minor technical quibbles, there's nothing that I would change about the first series. I think it hit a lot of high notes. I think it had a lot of moments that it sort of rested and breathed and started to work on the characters. And now that we're in this second season, we can sort of reset everything and take the this new universe available and sort of grow into that. I'm excited to see where it goes. Well, I told a lot of jokes as a kid. I had some kind of instinct to entertain at a very young age. So I suppose that, coupled with a certain faculty with language, I've always been pretty clever in terms of using language and writing and speech making and that sort of thing. So all that stuff coupled together sort of pushed me in the direction of getting out in front of people and entertaining them with my voice and my gestures and that sort of thing. I got into drama in high school. I was in a couple of plays. Nothing terribly major. I did one or two lead roles, but I was, very, as you are in high school, you're very inexperienced, and you're just sort of flailing up there. Um, that wasn't my initial, you know, uh, guiding plan for my life. I was going to be a novelist, actually. I was, going to write the great American novel, or at least the good American novel. Um, but when I got into college, that drama spark, came again, and I found myself more dedicated to it, more successful at it, and I've been doing it for years now, and I can't imagine my life being any other way now. So, well, I always have a couple of irons in the fire, probably too many. Um, I always do work with Pendant Audio, who do various audio drama podcasts. They do Shakespeare. I'm usually in those. In fact, I just wrapped up recording for Julius Caesar as the titular character there. Um, I'm on their show Seminar. I play the artificial intelligence, the dean, and I often appear in the individual stories. It's a sort of like a sci-fi anthology kind of show with an overarching narrative and then sort of Twilight Zone style, contained episodes within. And I often play characters in those particular sections. I'm also a part of something called the Sarcastic Voyage podcast, hosted by my friends Al and Matt from Seattle. It's a sketch comedy podcast. I do voices on the show all the time, and I write my own sketches and also work in collaboration with them to develop sketches, and that's a lot of fun. If you're interested in sketch comedy at all, I would definitely encourage you to check it out. Other than that, there's also, of course, the Doctor Who fan stories project, which I feel a little bad about cross-promoting on this Nth Doctor thing. But we do a different thing. Our tone is different. Our cast is mostly different. We've pulled some people over. But if you're interested in more Doctor Who material in the form of sort of a hybrid between an audio book and a proper audio drama. There's dialogue between the characters, but there's also a narrator sort of explaining actions and things. If you're interested in that at all, please go and check it out. It's on YouTube and Tumblr and all that. We're always looking for new people to listen and to give feedback, because we're still working on it. I like that now that we've settled the issue of the oncoming storm, and now that, Austen's Doctor is now primed and ready to go and be, who he was supposed to be the whole time. There's just, it's the sort of wide open space there, the variety of ventures that could happen. Is staggering, and that's the most exciting part. That we can go literally anywhere from here, because you're not tied down to any particular, tugging of continuity or unresolved thread issues, story thread issues. You can just go, and so I'm eager to see, where the Doctor and Alice goes, and who they meet, and how new companions might fit into the picture, and all that stuff. It's a moment of the show's regenerating a little bit, and so I'm eager to see where that goes. I'm also excited about actually writing for the show. I've got a 2-parter that I'm currently working on. That'll be somewhere in the middle of the season, if I'm not mistaken. And so that's different for me, and it's the first time that I've written an episode for a Doctor Who anything. So not the first time I've written an audio script, of course, but for in a Doctor Who context, certainly. And so that is both exciting and terrifying in equal measure. Well, I mean, I'm of course still working on it. I'm still working hard on it, trying to capture, the voice of Austen's Doctor and Emma and all these sort of new characters, and trying to keep things the humor of the show that is very distinct, going and the hallmarks of the show. So that's both fun and challenging, and so I'm excited to see how that happens. Now, this is the best question. This is a very good question. Um, I'm split between two answers. One of which is, of course, sort of the nebulous, quote unquote, the future. I'm always eager to see. I've always been a sci-fi guy. I mean, I've never really been into fantasy or anything like that. I'm always interested in, like, artificial intelligence and laser guns and, like sleek chrome covered, sci-fi landscapes, robots and all that. So I would like to go, maybe 100, 200 years into the future and see, where we are, where we've tracked in terms of, cultural stuff, technological stuff, economic stuff. I'd like to see what happens in the future, and like what sort of brave new worlds, so to speak, that we're exploring, either on this planet or on any other. If that's not a good enough answer, I would say probably the country of Japan. Sometime during the Meiji Restoration. I think that's an interesting period of history where you've got these sort of Western industrializing influences encroaching on distinctly traditional Japanese elements with the samurai and all that sort of thing. It would be a nice thing to observe from sort of my sort of privileged perspective, to see, how those cultures, clashed and melded, and, the reality of the war between the various, factions involved. And I think it would just be very, very enlightening to be there in that distinct moment of time.